I know everybody's had a late night last night, so I'm not going to talk for very, very long, but I'm just going to give you an insight into Asia, how people think and understand them. And so if you're looking for Asian investors into ICOs, then you have a better understanding of how they view things. Oops. So as soon as people find out that I work with wealthy Asian families, they inevitably have one question. What are these crazy rich Asians buying? And are they into cryptos? Are they into ICOs? So first and foremost, who are these wealthy Asians in the first place? So let me throw a few facts at you. First and foremost, as Alex has said, family businesses are a very critical pillar. They are the lifeblood of Asia. And as much as 80 to 90% of the large companies in Southeast Asia, according to Forbes, are family-owned. In India, it's 70 to 80%. China is a little bit less. It's 35 to 45% because there's so many state-controlled companies, SOEs we call them, state-owned enterprises. Now, in some countries like Indonesia and Philippines, over 95% are family businesses. And if you look at the impact they have on the economy, the 15 largest families, wealthiest families in Hong Kong control 84% of the GDP. Can you imagine what a big impact they are, right? And according to Forbes, the 50 richest families in Asia, they control roughly 699 billion total net worth. And just in 1 year, that increased by about 200 billion. So can you imagine, 40% increase literally in just 1 year. So this is what's attracting everyone into Asia and gives you a sense of how important wealth is. So the next slide is, I talk about the wealth iceberg. More? Okay. So I talk about the wealth iceberg. It's a concept that I came up with in 2010 that kind of represents the wealth in Asia. If you think about the richest man in the world, I think Jeff Bezos was worth about $100 billion over dollars. If you think about Jeff Bezos, how much of his money is in cash available for investments, and how much of the money is in Amazon stock? Do you hazard a guess? I would think at least 80 to 90%, maybe even more, is in Amazon stock, where he made his wealth. And at most 10 to 20%, or probably less, is available for investments. So in that same light, this is what happens in Asia. In Asia, when you look at these very, very rich families, 10 to 20% is what I call investable wealth, where they can put it into buying ICOs and investments and so forth. But the real money is that hidden iceberg at the bottom of the ocean. That's 80 to 90% of the real money, and that's tied up in the business. Either they own these private companies outright, or it may be already a listed company, in which case they still own a majority stake, at least 51 to 70%. They would never ever sell to seed control. So this is really what it's like in Asia. So next I want to share with you the story of someone I call the $6 billion man. And this client of ours was on the Forbes richest list in his own country. He's worth $6 billion. And he's second generation. Her father was the founder and patriarch of the company. And they're very actively involved in the family business. The family business is in many, many diverse industries across the board, different sectors and so forth. And he had been personally involved in the family business for at least 15, 20 years. I think he was in his 40s, mid to late 40s at that time. So we started talking about things that might interest him, in the context of the wealth iceberg. Is he interested in investments that are facing the tip at the 10 to 20%, or is he interested in solutions that will hit his business wealth? And it turns out that he has no interest whatsoever in financial investments, something that pays in 10%, he's kind of eyes glaze over because for him it's not very meaningful or exciting. But what was more interesting for him was to actually borrow, do 100 million financing where he gets to borrow money. Can you imagine a guy who's worth $6 billion and he's more interested in borrowing money than he is to invest? And what he wanted was that innovative proposal for 100 million financing that he could use to fund the next new business for his family. So this is just one example of how a very rich Asian family might think. They are very involved in business. So as I was trying to say, wealth is still very young in Asia. In some countries, it's still first generation. In China, for example, you hear of a billionaire being made every day. These are still first generation, but other parts of Asia, maybe second to third generation. It's very rare to find fourth generation or older because the companies have only been started maybe 100 years ago. And as I said, majority of these are family businesses. They are very active in the business that made the wealth in the first place. So family business is priority, financial investments are secondary. And nowadays, they are setting up their own single family offices. So we hear a lot about Asian family offices. The ones that are wealthy enough have their own with a professional team. Sometimes the younger generation are also involved in the family office. Others who are maybe a little bit smaller may not want to have the cost of their own single family office, so they might join a multi-family office and pool the cost together with their other family friends. So what are the investments that they're interested in? The top classes are real estate. Property is always very exciting in Asia. But besides that, they love private equity. They love venture capital. Okay. Now, how do they invest? Well, typically, in the past, they were investing in funds. And these funds could be professional fund managers in PE and VC. These days, they kind of like to do direct investments because why buy a portfolio run by a professional fund manager when you can pick and choose projects that you believe in yourself, not pay the fees, and how they get to control the transaction is to co-invest with other families and control enough of the investment that they can get a good deal. So this is just in general about what Asia is looking at. So how does that impact you when it comes to blockchain and ICOs? A large majority of ICOs really are a special case of early startup PE and VC, right, with a blockchain component. So these families are already involved in PE and VC, but what they do is they've taken equity stakes. So when you come out to Asia and you say, well, are the rich buying ICOs and so forth, you're trying to sell them an investment that is in tokens that are in denominations of like $1 at a time. On the other hand, they're already buying PE and VC excuse me, in denominations that are $1 million at a time, and they're buying equity already. So why dumb down to sell to a rich Asian? Why not meet them at where they are and sell them something that makes sense to them? So what makes sense to them is, does your ICO have a good business model that makes a difference to their business? If there is a strategic reason for them to be involved with you, maybe they are already in that sector, but your technology using blockchain helps them in their family business, that can get very, very exciting. So why not they take a stake in your ICO, help you open doors, help you build your business, and you can help them also in their family business at the same time. So we're looking more at strategic reasons to be investors other than just a financial investment in itself. The other thing I've noticed is that there's a difference between generations. So if you have families that go towards 2 or 3 generations, it's usually the younger generation, the millennials, late 20s, early 30s. They've been educated to the best business schools. They're very interested in technology and more likely to embrace blockchain and ICOs. The older generation, you're talking the patriarchs who formed the companies in the first place, they might be in their 60s, 70s, 80s. They're not so much into technology, and at this point in time, they're still running the company. So I think the challenge is to be able to engage the younger generation who are already interested, easier to convince, and if there is a reason for them to be involved in your business, and for you to help them to grow their business, I think it will be very exciting. And then the younger generation will then try to work in the opportunity into the wider family business, and also eventually convince the older generation that that is a worthy cause to be working towards. At this point, maybe, Alex, sorry. At this point, maybe, can I see if there are any questions before I make another point? I think this would be a nice time to ask questions. No? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I'm HDAC Technology CEO John Bae. Could you explain some reference of your Asian investors portfolio about the investment reference before?
I'm sorry.
Okay, so may I get some information from you about the history about investment reference cases, real cases?
Investment reference
Yeah, yeah.
into ICOs
Yeah,
or
or
investment?
other, ICO project or other investment cases.
Okay.
Because
So-
you have emphasized about the potential. So
Yes, okay. So, for example, I know of one family office. They started off managing their own investments into just regular private equity and regular venture capital. They started to do that very, very well. Then they started to have funds, and that they get other investors to come in, basically other family offices who then benefit from their fund management. Now, as said maybe 1 month ago, they are starting to launch their own ICO fund. But this is a very, very early stage. They are at the concept level. They are starting up the fund. They haven't raised the money yet, and they haven't yet invested. So this is just like one example of how a family office is getting into the business. What I think is really interesting is the strategic reasons for it. So I am working with a couple of other projects. One is, for example, a clean energy project. Frankly, it has nothing to do with blockchain at this point in time, but they have an IP, they are patenting their technology. It's going to have a new impact on clean energy where it's cheaper and better. And at this point in time, I'm just putting them together with families who want to invest in them so that they have the money to scale up, they have the money to get all the patents involved worldwide. And the next step then is how can those families open doors for them in their country. So my concept to the clean energy company is if I can find them a family office in each country where that family will help to open doors in that country for them, that's my goal. Has nothing to do with blockchain yet, but if blockchain helps the process, then why not? This is where I'm coming from. Yeah, frankly, I'm not a blockchain expert, like a lot of you out here, but I'm more a connector between family offices, family money, the interests of what they have versus what you can bring to them and vice versa. Any other questions before I go on to the next thought-provoking area? Okay. I think what's even more exciting in future would be how blockchain can change their businesses from internally. So a stepping stone was the previous one where you have the technology, they have the money, and you find strategic interests of working together. The next step is how can blockchain change their business internally and develop applications that will modernize and revolutionize their business. Because many families in Asia are into all bricks and mortar business. And they're looking to diversify, they're looking to modernize, and they're looking to be relevant and future-proof the business. So I think the next step is to be working towards a bigger goal of how that will change the family business from inside, and again, target the younger generation because they are the ones that are going to champion it, not the founders who started the bricks and mortar. So that is actually the main part of my presentation. I leave you with two thought-provoking ideas. If you want to raise money in Asia, think about how you can be meaningful to them, to the families, how they can be meaningful to you, and what strategic interests you can develop together, and also how we can help them to change their business for the future. If you have any questions or want to talk to me more on that.
I have a question.
Okay.
So these ultra-rich families, are they interested in security tokens? Are they interested in utility tokens? Or are they interested in jurisdiction? Or do they simply not care? Can you tell me a little bit about that? Or
I think it's not so important that it is blockchain per se, or security token, or utility token. I think the business part has to first make sense. And if it includes blockchain, good. But are they interested in tokens per se? They've been buying private equity. They've been buying equity in the company. Why be satisfied with a token, especially a utility token? Utility token is good for things like loyalty programs where you get a huge following. But they're putting major money and they're one family, so why would they need a utility token? They're more interested in equity, they're interested in seeing your business grow, they're interested in how you can help them make their family business grow. So I think the talk about tokens is a little bit too simplistic for them. I think they're more interested in how it can be meaningful. Yeah.
But so most Asian investors, I understand, are in it to gamble and to make money, but ultra-rich families are not in it for that. They're more in it to, find technology, find businesses that help their businesses grow.
I think so, yes. The ones that are interested in the quick money, they're not really the very, very ultra-rich. They put whatever they can into the casino of a blockchain, right? And that kind of money has disappeared. But the real family money has been there all along, and they're still going to be there when it makes sense for them. It's finding the projects that make sense for them, I feel.
Yeah, sure.